So guys, woohoo! I know it's late in the day. Hopefully you guys are over the food coma, right? You still got some energy? You're gonna stick with me here. All right, I gotta wait for this to reset, but let me just ask a question. Who likes to wait? You guys like to wait long periods of time? One person. Would you agree that it's easier to wait if you know how long you have to actually wait for? Yeah, right? So I know a lot of people think that Bitcoin adoption is coming, Bitcoin hyperinflation is coming. Who thinks it's coming in the next 3 or 4 years? 5 or 10 years? Okay, there we go. All right. So what I want to talk about today is my slides up? Bitcoin and the recurring theme, and how we can look through history to see what it is that we're actually dealing with, how this all unravels, what type of time periods we have, and most importantly, what we should all be doing as Bitcoiners through these different cycles in order to get the adoption to happen. Does that sound good? Because we should be doing something. I just want to tell you guys something. You guys, the Bitcoin maximalists, the hodlers, and you're gonna go get your little Bitcoin and go hodl on the hill, that ain't gonna cut it, all right? We have to be more active. We can't be passive with this. It's time for action, all right? Now, I do also want to say just one quick disclaimer. I have to say this. I'm gonna be talking my book here. I'm gonna be shilling. I own Bitcoin. And so I hope that you guys buy it too. Sound good? Because we all like the NGU, number go up, right? All right, so it's always been technology that changes the world. We can look back through thousands of years of history, and it's always one small piece of technology that changes the world as we know it. History shows us that. It changes the way that we work, the way that we communicate, the way that we organize. It changes our structures, it changes our institutions, it changes our mental paradigms. It drives massive amounts of change, changing us and the world as we know it. Bitcoin, and the point that I want to make here is that Bitcoin is not even just a new technology. A lot of people think it is, which it is a new technology, but it's what I believe is actually creating a technological revolution, which is much different than a new technology. I want to break that down. There's been 5 technological revolutions that have happened over the last 300 years, and I believe Bitcoin is helping us usher in the 6th technological revolution, and it's one that I have called the decentralized revolution. I have a nationally syndicated radio show. Apparently some people still listen to the radio. It's on the iHeartRadio network, and each and every week I talk about the decentralized revolution, talking about the way that the world is changing. When new technologies happen, it's one new piece of technology, isolated on its own, that's typically an extension of a previous cycle. An iPhone, for example. Everyone have an iPhone? Most of you? No, you're good Bitcoiners, you have Androids, right? The iPhone, whatever, the smartphone is a new piece of technology, and it was cool. It extended the last revolution, but by itself, it was just a computer and a phone. We put the two together. That's cool. Didn't change the course of the world. Tech revolutions, in contrast, changed the entire techno-economic paradigm that we know. They give us a new set of building blocks to build new things that we never could have imagined. Us as humans, we're no good at imagining the future because all we can do is imagine a better version of what we have today. And we can only imagine a better version of what we have today based off of the building blocks that we have. And that's why technological revolutions are so much different. So they change the course of humanity, and they also drive financial markets. All right, they're different than new technologies in several different ways. And there's 2 different ways that they interact with each other. I've sort of drawn this up here. There's 2 ways. One, technological revolutions are not just a new technology, but a cluster of new technologies, a cluster of dynamic products, technologies, industries, and infrastructure that generate explosive growth and positive change. They work with some of the old technologies, some of the old, more generic technologies, some of the organizational principles that we have in order to create new engines of growth within that. And together, it creates more productivity in the entire system. So that's what technology is supposed to do, create more productivity. Of course, the fiat money system works against us. That's a whole other topic. So what I want to break down for you real quick is the difference of new technologies versus technological revolutions. And there's really 4 distinct ways this changes. All right, 4 distinct ways: the scope and the impact, the economic and social implications of that, the institutional and ideologies of that, and the timing and duration. The timing and duration is what we're going to go into so you can know how long you have to wait. And then, like I said, we'll talk about what you have to be doing. So first of all, the difference of a new technology: the iPhone, a personal computer, a laptop. Those are all technologies, and they're all cool, and they're all transformative, and I love them, and I use them. But the technological revolution is different in the scope and the impact. So in the scope and impact, it's a cluster of interrelated technologies that transform multiple aspects of a society and the economy, and they have profound and long-lasting impacts. They change the course of humanity. Now, when we look at Bitcoin specifically, and we'll bring this back to some things that you already know, but Bitcoin specifically, we can already see this. So it's not just Bitcoin, and it's certainly not blockchain. It's not Bitcoin, it's blockchain, right? No. See, blockchain is one piece of what makes Bitcoin so unique. We have cryptography, we have consensus mechanisms, we have public and private keys, we have blockchain, or really what the white paper says is, does the white paper actually even use the word blockchain? Anyone know? If you read your white paper, you would know it doesn't even use the word blockchain. It uses the word time chain. We have peer-to-peer networking. So this is a cluster of technologies that have come together to create this. And we also now have mining. So we can see how that started to change the world, the scope of even just what mining is doing. And so I'm going to give you a couple examples so we can see just how deep this goes. We'll get into mining in a minute, but just think about mining in the sense that it is revolutionizing the electrical grid, the power generation, power distribution system of the world as we know it. Think about how powerful it is. Think about how powerful it is in changing even the geoeconomic world as we know it. We're a nation like El Salvador who has no goods and services, no oil, no gold. They got bananas and coconuts, but they also have a volcano that they can now mine with. Think about how that changes the power dynamic of the entire world. And what are all the industries, what are all the technologies that will be spun out in order to enable that and develop that? We have Lightning. Think about Lightning as a payment network. We'll get more into that in a minute. The second is that we have the ideologies and the institutions and how this changes. So it changes business models as we know it. It changes economic paradigms. It creates brand new markets. So with Bitcoin specifically, we can already see we're creating industries. It's changing industries that rely on centralization for consensus. Facebook, Amazon, Wells Fargo. All of the institutions that have been built up under the old paradigm of the internet have all become centralized. They're all failing us today, and this is part of what will be changed. We have economic paradigms such as a fiat financial system. And the fact that the Fed has tricked us into thinking that the money supply always has to go up. How can we have economic growth if the money supply doesn't increase? Asset prices are a good thing, or so they say. We've been taught to believe in our ideologies in these institutions that we need gatekeepers. We have to have gatekeepers. Who else will be who else will tell us what is true? Who else will handle the consensus? Who else will make the payments? We've been told that we need debt in order to have velocity of money. So these are all ideologies and institutions that have fed us this that we believe. All this has to be challenged. We see that there's a difference in the societal values. And so we can see that everything that we've learned in our current culture today, such as instant gratification. People think that the way to get wealth is now through gambling or theft. All of these ideals have to be changed. Bitcoin is changing that now. Bitcoin is ushering in long-term thinking, prioritizing saving over consuming, helping us all to realize that what we need to be doing is providing value to the world instead of consuming or taking, showing us that cooperation leads to more economic growth than coercion. All of these ideals will be changed by this technological revolution. And finally, the last piece is that technological revolutions are different than a technology on its own. Bitcoin is not a technology, it's a revolution. And it's lastly because of the timing and duration. And this is the part that I want to get into so you can understand how I see this all unfolding. And it happens through 4 distinct phases, 2 periods and 4 distinct phases that happen over a long period of time. Now, first of all, as I said, there's been 5 technological revolutions over the last 300 years. I believe we're entering the 6th right now. You can see a chart I have up on the screen right here where I've mapped them all out. They happen on approximately 50-year time frames. Now, you might have heard of like chondroitin waves or K waves. He maps them out on like a 40 to 60-year window. I call it a 50. Sort of like the seasons. Sure, we have summer starts here, spring starts here. Doesn't mean the weather changes instantly that day. So it's like a range. So just kind of bear with us a little bit. You have to understand these are concepts and they change, but it's not exactly, but about every 50 years. And we can see that the last 5 technological revolutions have happened since the mid-1700s. We had the Industrial Revolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, we had people working in farms and the cottage industry. That's it. It was a decentralized world of people working out there, and all of a sudden we had machines that could do the work of 5,000 men. Now what the heck are these 5,000 men gonna do? Well, turns out science, medicine, things like that. Then we move forward. So that, you can see how that changed the course of humanity. Then the next we came with steam engines and railways. Now we could move heavy loads and cargo across continents, across the ocean. It opened up global trade, global commerce, changed the course of humanity. Next, we had electricity and steel and heavy machinery. Now we could build skyscrapers. We could start to connect the world. We could have electricity. Next, 1908, we had the age of oil, automobiles, and mass production. Again, not just the automobile. The automobile was one thing, one piece of technology. It was a cluster of innovation between oil and having the automobile and having mass production that allowed us to build this industrial revolution. Now, finally in 1908, then we had 1971, the age of the microprocessor, which brought us telecommunications, which brought us personal computers, which brought us the internet as we know it today, and it brought us earlier versions of digital money. DigiCash, DigiGold, you've heard of some of these things, all right? So these are technological revolutions, and I believe we're entering, like I said, the 6th decentralized revolution. Let's break this down a little bit into a little bit more detail so you can understand. So going back 2 revolutions to 1908, we had the age of automobiles, mass production, heavy machinery. Now, during that time, if you think about this, what we had was a new types of technology. So we had automobiles. That was cool. All of humanity, people walked and rode horses. All of humanity, we walked and rode horses. And now we could drive. Now we could move stuff in trucks. Now we could transport stuff. That was cool. We also had the age of oil. So now we had cheap oil, access abundant to oil, and oil fuels. Because what good is a car without oil and fuels? Then we had petrochemicals. So that created all types of things. So petrochemicals help make the tires, also help make my shoes, and also help make all kinds of medicines, pesticides, things like that, cleaners. And then we had the combustion engine. We had home electrical appliances. So we had this cluster of new technologies. What was created out of this cluster of new technologies? Well, we had networks of roads, highways, airports. We had networks of oil ducts to move the oil around the world. We had universal electricity. We had worldwide analog telecommunications. Now we had instant communication and things like that because of this cluster of technologies. So that's what happened back then. Now, one thing I want to point out is that these technologies on their own are nothing without their infrastructure, which seems pretty obvious to us in hindsight, but I'm going to apply it back to something where we're at today so it'll bring more sense. But it's pretty obvious in hindsight if you think about what good is a car if you don't have any roads to drive it on, and if there's no gas stations to fill up in. Just recently, I think it was the president of Ford took the brand new Ford F-150 Lightning EV on a road trip, and there was a whole article that came out, and he was completely shocked because he didn't realize the reality of driving an EV across the country when there's nowhere to charge. And he was devastated to think about that, and so now they want to partner with Tesla to try to figure that out. But this is the reality that they're finding themselves in 120 years after that revolution happened. All right, so that's sort of comparing one. Now let's look at the one that we're in today. This is the age of decentralization. Now, Bitcoin is one of many technologies that are a cluster of technologies that are ushering in this age of decentralization. And again, we have cryptography. So we have NOSTR. Anyone using NOSTR? I'm trying to. hit me up on there. Well, maybe I'll start posting some messages. But it uses some of these technologies like cryptography to allow us a new form of communication, open communication networks, consensus mechanisms, public and private keys, blockchain, or as I said, time chain, peer-to-peer networking, mining digital wallets. We talked about all those. Now, those are new technologies. What can we do with this cluster of new technologies? Well, we don't know the future, but some things we can see that it's redefining the infrastructure of the world as we know it, as in money, banking, and payments. All that's being changed as we know it. The way that we even exchange and transfer value between each others. For example, a content creator could put his content directly out peer-to-peer, say on NOSTR, and get paid back instantly peer-to-peer with money. As we stream content down, we can stream money back up. So it's changing the entire way that we even imagine transferring value. It's changing the world of peer-to-peer communications. And it's even changing, as I said earlier, the way that we even imagine, the way that we even generate energy and distribute energy, manage energy, and so much more. So we're starting to see how all of this is changing the world as we see it. Now, what happens is, as we've gone through these 5 technological revolutions, one starts to die out and another one picks up. So in 1971, we saw the microprocessor bring us personal communications, telephone, telecommunications, internet, etc. But the internet has a problem. It's got a fatal problem. The fatal problem is that it's been co-opted. It's been taken over. It's been centralized. I can tell by looking at all you guys are all big fans of being censored on the internet, right? You guys love that? Oh no, you don't like that. That's why you're here, right? So we can see that the internet is no longer working in our best interest anymore. It's been taken over. Now the internet by itself is actually somewhat decentralized. They wiped Alex Jones off the face of the earth, but yet he's even bigger today on his own internet. But it's the payments piece that was missing. So this is where we start to look at a new technological revolution that takes pieces of the old one and continues on. So I've kind of mapped out, as you can see, centralized networks or systems going down as decentralized networks and systems are going up. I put some years on the bottom of how I think this plays out. But let's get more into the timing. So specifically, as we're looking at technological revolutions versus technologies, as I said, they happen in 2 distinct phases, and really there's 4 periods. So as you can see on the screen, we sort of have phase 1, which I call the surge. This is the new technology and the revolutions start to emerge, they start to be used, they start to increase in activity, and it's broken down by 2 different phases within that, the eruption phase and then the frenzy. Now in the eruption phase starts with what's called the Big Bang. Now, when we go back through, as I said, 300 years of history, we can see each one of these technological revolutions have happened in the exact same recurring theme. Now, doesn't mean the future is always going to be exactly the same, but so far, each one has been broken down into this exact reoccurring theme, and in my study, in my opinion, this is how I think it's rolling out. So, we start off with the Big Bang. As I said, the internet has started to lose its value to us because it's been co-opted. We saw earlier attempts at digital cash, but they couldn't quite figure it out because they didn't figure out what Satoshi figured out, which was how do we create the decentralization? How do we solve the double spend problem? And so with that, we had the Big Bang. It was created. I put that at 2010 right there just for easy numbers. And so from 2010 to 2020, that first 10-year period is this eruption phase and this explosion, which we've all been living in. All right, then next comes the frenzy phase. The frenzy is when we're starting to put it into everything. It starts to take over, it starts to move into everything, and we're starting to see that adoption happen all over the world. We're seeing nations adopt it. But as I said, it's not just about a piece of technology, but rather a cluster of technologies. And so even in the way that we're seeing, like some of the early examples that we have today of how it's reimagining even the electrical systems, the electrical grids, like what all the companies here in Texas are doing and exhibiting in the back. All right, now this is intense funding of new technology and a disdain for old assets. Who here likes putting their money into Bitcoin instead of like the S&P 500? Oh, so you guys have a disdain for old assets. You see, so this is what happens during this period. Then we have the frenzy. This is a time for finance. This is where we start to see a financial bubble, and really we start to see a separation of paper and real value. What makes these things worth so much money? There's no economic value behind that, is there? What's the PE ratio of this? There's not. We're not in that phase yet. Then we start to have this turning point, this is in the middle, where all of a sudden we start to rethink and reroute the old systems and old paradigms into the new, and we start to get into the synergy. The next phase is what we call the deployment phase. Now this is where these new technologies are actually starting to be used. We're not there yet. Sorry to tell you that. We're not there yet. Everybody wants us to be what's the use case? What do we do? I've talked to many of you guys in the back room. I'm still trying to think of how we go apply these things. Yes, we're still in the early stages trying to figure that out. We will get to the deployment stage later, and this is where we start to see the synergy, time for production. This is the golden age. We're starting to see actual production. We're starting to see actual employment happening, and then we start to see a recoupling of the real wealth and the paper wealth, and then we have the maturity. Now let me show you the time frames. As I said, it's easier to wait when you know how long you have to wait. So how long do we have to wait? Well, again, based off of 300 years of history of the last 5 technological revolutions, this is how it's broken down every single time. And I don't have a lot of doubts that this will be the same way we see it break down. Technology does change things, so maybe it happens a little bit faster, but they typically happen in 10-year cycles, as you can see there. My co-author of my book, The Uncommunist Manifesto, Alex Fetsky, he recently put out an article on Bitcoin Magazine, and he called it the 3 generations theory. I don't know if any of you guys read that, but basically kind of giving the same timeline but from a different perspective, more of a generational thing where my grandparents will never buy Bitcoin, but my grandkids will never buy gold. And that's sort of the 3 generations, and it lines out with this type of thinking. Now, the way that we move through this is there's three different forces, sequential forces that drive this recurring change every single time. And it's based on causal mechanisms, and they're in the very root and nature of capitalism itself. These mechanisms stems from 3 features of the system that interact and influence each other. 1, the change occurs by clusters, as I've already said, of technological innovation, building on successive technological revolutions of the past. So we're not going to throw away everything that we've learned. Obviously, we're still going to use cars, but we might have autonomous vehicles driving that have their own Bitcoin wallet and can earn on their own. So we don't throw away technologies of the past, but instead we bring some of that forward and merge it with the new technology that we have. 2, the difference between financial and production capital is what I'm going to get to next. There's interrelated types of capital, but they're separate because they have different criteria and different motives. And then 3, the inertia and resistance to change the socio-institutional framework versus the techno-economic paradigm. So it looks like this. So in these 2 phases, and this is a key piece here, in these 2 phases that we have between the surge and deployment, the first 20-year period and the second 20-year period, there's 2 distinct types of capital that are needed. Are you guys socialists or are you capitalists? Capitalists? Do we have any capitalists here? Raise your hand. Okay, great. So you have capital. So that means you believe in strong private property, and you believe in creating efficiency, and you believe in using your capital in cooperation with others to increase the level of living, right? So we use our capital in ways like that because we're capitalists. So we have to understand there's 2 types of capital that are needed in a technological revolution if we would like to see this revolution take place. Some of us think of ourselves as revolutionaries. No, we don't have to go commit suicide by putting our name on the Declaration of Independence like our founding fathers, but it's a new type of revolution that we're fighting today. Now, the first stage is set up by what we call financial capital. Some of you might not like this piece, but the early stages are financial capital. What is financial capital? It's the speculators. Remember, there is there's a separation between real and paper wealth right now. There is no PE ratio. There is no way to back into the profits of Bitcoin because there is none, which is why Warren Buffett doesn't get it. The first stage starts with the speculators. The speculators have the capital. Capitalists and speculators are looking to deploy that capital in order to increase the capital. They want to make money from having money. So you have money, you want to put it to work, you want that money to bring you back more money. You can invest into companies, early stage companies, venture capital funds like Channel Venture Partners, Bitcoin Opportunity Fund like I work with, and you can put that money to work and hopefully make more of it, all right? That's the first phase, speculation. Finally, later, the second phase will come, which is what we call production capital. Now, this is where we put money to work in production and we get money back. Let me give an example. When automobiles were created in 1908, that's cool. You just bought a Model T. Awesome, I'm stoked for you. You have it on blocks in your yard? Because you can't drive it, right? Because there's no roads and you got no gas stations. And there's no one to change your tire if you break down, right? So cool, you got a car. It don't do you any friggin' good because you got nowhere to drive it. The problem is someone needs to go build the roads, and someone needs to build the gas stations, someone needs to build the tire centers. But who's going to put the money up to build the gas stations? Because they're not going to make any money. They're not going to make any money because there's no freaking cars. We got a chicken or the egg scenario. What are we going to do? So somebody, a speculator, has to put money up, hoping, praying that maybe they'll get their money back at some future date. Now today, any of you can go buy a gas station and instantly start making money back, right? Because today we're in a later phase. Today it's called production capital. Anyone can go buy a gas station right now and get a return on investment. But in 1908, it was a speculative play. And that's where we're at today. And you have to understand, this is a much bigger thing. So let me explain. A gas station. Okay, so we need a gas station, sure. So when I get gas in my car and I put the gas pump in, who makes that little plastic cover that goes in there? When they measure how much gas in the tank, where did that gauge that they stick in come from? How did they figure out the pressurized truck to transfer the petroleum into the tanks? What about the LED screens that go on the gas pumps themselves? Oh, we just need roads, right? No big deal. How do we get roads? Oh, we need tractors. Caterpillar, someone has to design a Caterpillar. What about the rubber for the track? Where does that come from? Oh, no big deal. Thousands, millions of technologies that have to be developed for this technological revolution of the automobile and the roadways to achieve its fruition. So you're going to go buy your Bitcoin, your 6.25 Bitcoin, and you're going to hodl it, and you're going to disappear on a hill, and you're going to magically hope that the world changes. But unfortunately, that's not the way it works. Someone's got to build the roads. It ain't the government. I know, my roads. If I don't pay taxes, where do the roads come? It comes from you guys. You guys are the speculators. So there's two different types of capital, complementary roles, but at different periods and for different things. Now, through these technological revolutions, we have a revolutionary battle that will come up. There's conditions of the previous revolution that don't fit. We no longer like the centralized world that we created. And then we have a process called creative destruction that destroys the old for the new. It has to dismantle. It has to tear down all the old frameworks and install brand new ones. And that's not easy. The old guard doesn't like to go out easy, and we don't like to change either. The old guard is resistant to change. Kodak didn't want to go out of business, but they did. We also have massive social implications because of this. There's radical changes in the patterns of production, organization, management, communication, transportation. And people don't like that. Some people get phased out. They don't want that to happen. They resist that change. It requires massive amounts of effort, investment, and learning. That's why you guys are here. You're here learning. You read books, like Jimmy Son's book. You read it, you learn. You spend money. You spent money to come here. You're spending your time, effort, energy. It takes all of that individually and socially. And this is why it takes about a half a century. This is why it takes 3 generations, as Alex Svetsky wrote about. And finally, it comes down to all of us with the mind virus. Orange pilling people. The people involved in the changes that occur in technology and the economy are us on the ground floor. We have to spread the common sense of each new techno-economic paradigm. Because the old people, they don't see it. As Jeff Booth says, you can't see the new system when you're stuck in an existing system. So for us that can start to see that, it's up to us to spread that and to spread it to their other spaces like a virus. From person to person, weakening the old mental maps and introducing the new. So the question I'll leave you with is that I believe personally that we should build the world that we want. I don't believe that I'm a victim. I believe that I'm responsible for the world that I want. I believe that I'm responsible to set an example for my kids and my friends and my community, and it's up to me to build the world that I want. Otherwise, I get the world that somebody else wants. There's a saying that says you either build the life of your dreams or someone else will hire you to build their life of their dreams. And I ain't building anyone else's dream. I'm building my dream, and it takes each one of us to do that. But here's the thing. Your 6.25 Bitcoin in long-term storage and you go live on a mountaintop ain't gonna do it. It's not gonna do it. So, what are you gonna do? Again, you don't have to go storm the beaches of Normandy in World War II like my grandfather's generation had to, but you might have to sacrifice some of your time, your effort, and your energy, and yes, you might even have to put some of your capital at risk in order to build this environment. I think it's worth it. Anyone else think it's worth it? And I'm going to ask you, because supposedly Gary calls this the Bitcoin Maximalist Conference. You guys maximalists? Okay, so you guys are the maximalists. So then I would just ask you, if you guys are the maximalists and you're not going to put your time, effort, energy, and money at risk to build the world, then who the hell is? I'm out. Thanks.
Grandpa, why do you have so much Bitcoin?
Well, it all started in the year 2023 when I attended a conference called BitBlockBoom.
What's BitBlockBoom, Grandpa?
It was a conference where people talked about Bitcoin. This was way back when we used something called the US dollar for money.
What? Bitcoin wasn't always the world's money?
If it weren't for great speakers at BitBlockBoom like Jimmy Song, Adam Curry, and Preston Pish, we'd all be living in pods and eating bugs. Instead, I was able to avoid fiat enslavement and secure generational wealth.
F***ing legend.
Be the legend your grandchildren deserve. Experience the best Bitcoin conference out there and join the Bitcoin revolution. BitBlockBoom, the only conference for true Bitcoin maximalists. Book your tickets today at bitblockboom.com and use the code BBB1 for a special discount.